Action! Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I'm Tim Wild. That's Josh. We are here, as always, well, not always. Sometimes we talk about other things, but in the December month and January and February, because that's how long it takes us to do it, we go through the Cobra Kai show on Netflix. Hopefully you watched it. I don't know why we didn't watch it. Anyone that has watched any episodes of Cobra Kai has already seen the fourth season, because once you watch one, you got to watch them all. And once one launches, then you got to watch the ones that launch, or else other people are going to talk about it and spoil it for you and ruin it.
Like us.
Well, like us. So this is going to be a spoil-full discussion on episodes 1 and 2 of Season 4, named New Beginnings and First Leaf Stand? First... I'm gonna look that up while you're talking at some point.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that are really interesting about this season and these episodes.
It's long-winded.
And so there's a lot of fun stuff that comes out of this. You initially, at the very beginning, you kind of get an idea of where everybody is at, and it's fairly quick. And one of the things that I talked about in the season 3, one of my biggest, criticisms was the first 4 episodes was like everybody just catching you up on where everybody was after the karate gang war that happened at school. And then in this one, they really kind of sum up everything that happened in the karate gang war that happened at the LaRusso's house in about 5-10 minutes. And I
would say like 5-10 lines max. I don't even think they give it 5-10 lines.
Yeah, and I did like that they had a very plausible, easy explanation as to why they didn't. Because you're like, the karate gang war thing happens, and you're like, why is not everybody expelled, and what is going on here?
In jail.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I like that. The other thing that I found that was really interesting about this episode, these episodes in particular, now we have Johnny and Daniel working together, and it even starts out with Terry Silver. That's the first thing you see is Terry Silver, right? Is Terry Silver playing the piano.
Correct.
And John Kreese's call.
First thing you allude to is the call, but they don't reveal that it's Terry Silver for like another 20 minutes.
Yeah, but everybody knows who it is.
It's like he's on the front, not even just on the poster. He's like the main part of the poster, I swear. And they're still like, who's this guy? He's like playing the classical music on the piano. And then like the camera's behind him, and it's like, there he is. And you see the phone ring. He's like, hello. And he's like, and then you hear the line from the last movie, and then John Kreese is like, "Hey, old friend," or whatever, and then he's like, "Swipe," and then he puts it down, and you don't see him. And then later on, when they reveal him, it's like starts at he's like at the balcony or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, he's having his little sushi party, right?
Climbs up his shirt, and there's like, there he is. He turns around, all dramatic, and it's like, yeah, we know he's in the show. That's what you guys been hyping the whole time.
But I gotta reveal. But I gotta tell you though, right? Like one of the things that I liked about this show was Terry Silver's progression after Karate Kid 3. He kind of makes a joke about the fact that he's like, I spent a summer picking on a high school kid, terrorizing a high school kid because of a karate tournament. Yeah. And all that, and just talking about how ridiculous it was. I thought a really interesting thing that they brought up in this is they made him a cokehead.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really a smart move, because that dude was insane in Karate Kid 3.
And it showed the appropriate clips of him like in the shower laughing like I like that, Jenny. He's like cackling up. He's like the Joker. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I liked that. I also liked it. It was really interesting. So John Kreese, that they basically alluded to that after Karate Kid 3, John Kreese straight up just disappears for like 30 years. He's gone, and nobody can see him anywhere or find him.
Presumed dead,
right? Yeah. I love that Terry Silver, as soon as John Kreese is out of his life, he gains sobriety, right? And he's kind of found clarity and is doing relatively well. You find in later episodes that like he's not really doing that well. I mean, he's still on medication. It seems as though, you know, he's had some episodes where they've needed to call a doctor, presumably for some sort of PTSD related to the war or something of that nature. Because you see some of that also. I can't remember if it's in episode 2 or not, the one where the guy is trying to light the creme brulee and it's sounding like a gun. And when he's doing that, you know, he starts kind of going back to that part, you know, in the war when they're stuck in the camp.
Yeah.
And so,
a couple of things in that season, I don't remember.
Yeah, and so you know, it's alluded to that even though Terry Silver is not okay, you know, he's got PTSD as you would expect as someone who was a POW for a small time in Vietnam. You see that he's been able to, as long as he doesn't have the influence of John Kreese in his life, he has been able to kind of find some sort of what I think Mr. Miyagi would call balance, right? He had some balance in his life. So that was really interesting as well. The other thing I found really interesting in this was the progression of Hawk, because now Hawk is kind of in this weird spot where he has pissed everybody off by switching. You know, he switched from Cobra Kai to Miyagi-Do or Eagle Fang or whatever he did, and kind of just now he's in this weird position where he's pissed everybody off. Nobody likes him. And so,
you know, what's interesting is you're right. He actually didn't have a designated dojo because he turned in the middle of the fight in Daniel's house. Like, he didn't like come and join the Hawk or the Eagles or Miyagi-Do. He just turned around during the fight and then showed up the first day of their unified training sequence. So
right.
Yeah, he doesn't really have a place to stand. And in the first episode, we see them they're beginning their training with the joint Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang, which is interesting because you see, as you're talking about Hawk, and I didn't catch this the first time, I just rewatched it again tonight, that he's out there getting picked on by Johnny. He's having everyone target him and sweep his leg, and and then you hear him through the wall like getting punched in the groin and stuff like that. But he's when he goes inside, he's admiring the art from the Miyagi traditions, the fisherman picture or whatever, and then Dimitri comes in and tells him what the story is. He's just talking to his friend, and then the other kids come in and they start razzling him up and harassing him. And he stays humble, he's apologetic, but he's like, you go out there with your Eagle Fangs, you're not wanted in here. Talking about the Miyagi-Do group, because they're segregated at that point. But outside with the Fangs, he's getting beat up and punished, essentially. And then inside, he's getting he's being or not neglected, but he's just being an outcast. So like, he really doesn't have a place to fit in, which I think is very strong, a good strong setup for his overall arc in this season. His being neglected, him not being as cool as he thought he was at school with the girls, and then when he gets his head shaved and everything, and then that tournament just turns into just such an earned, not just physically in the fighting, but such an earned as a character moment for him, which is why I love that he beat Robbie. And but that's all set up here, and it's really interesting. It's really, or not emotional, but it's well done that he's like just taking it all in. He's not being aggressive, which is what his whole mentality has been the whole show, because he's Cobra Kai, very aggressive, strike first, all that stuff. He's not like that now. He's pretty humble, just because, and it's all self-reflection. Nothing happened to him. He didn't get beat up and embarrassed or hurt to like be like, oh, maybe I should like lighten up. He's just there hanging out with these kids that he knows what he's done to them. You know, I think it's really strong. It's a strong setup for him. It's kind of subtle. You know, there's that scene in the dojo with the kids, but like, it's really just, you're just got to kind of think about what he's going through in contrast with who he's been the entire series up till now.
Yeah. And again, you know, that it's so interesting, right? Like, here we have all of these different people. As soon as they're out of Cobra Kai's grips, they seem to thrive fairly well. But once they're involved in Cobra Kai, they just go into this mad decline. Another thing that I found really interesting was Daniel puts a lot of pressure on Sam right out the gate. So like right out the gate in the show, they're talking about, oh, well, what about this, maniac Tori? Well, we don't got to worry about her. Sam will wipe the floor with her. It's kind of like this whole idea that Sam is going to kind of be the one to carry on the Miyagi-Do name. It seems as though they're already putting a lot of pressure on her, which you find out in later in the season that she kind of doesn't want to go the same way as her dad. Like there's the joke later on about, she's going to take over the dealership, and then maybe I do want to be a Cobra Kai. Why can't I train, like this or that? So there was all that as well. And then of course, there's Johnny just always there. It's pretty heavy in this episode on Johnny's ridiculousness, and all of his ridiculous lines, the whole, like when he's making dinner for Miguel and his mom, and he's like, yeah, authentic, got this off the Chili's website, like the old country
meal. He's like mango salsa, just like the old country, just piling out there. And and it's funny because the grandma is a grandma or the aunt, whoever she is,
the grandma, yeah,
she's sitting there, she just love it, or just thinks it's hilarious. So they always had fun dialogue about Johnny in Spanish I can't understand, and talking to Miguel, she's like, she says like he thinks we're Mexican, not Cuban or something, or Miguel says that, I don't remember, but they think it's adorable how much he tries. Yeah, that's so funny. There's other things he says too, like there's this whole back and forth, like for example, like I think it's the first episode, it might be the second, but when him and Daniel are talking, they're talking like divorced parents. Like, when are we going to tell the kids that we're splitting, and then like, oh, we got to tell them, we just got to rip the Band-Aid off and just go tell them. How are we going to tell them? It just sounds like they're divorced, like they're parents that are getting divorced. I think that comes up later. They talk about, they show up in the second episode, and we're jumping all over the place. We usually kind of go through this a little more slowly, but later on when they decide it's over, I think that's when they, before they have their duel, that's when that line about the Band-Aid comes off. But they show up early, and then they hear the commotion in the backyard, and then they go back and see all the kids working together to build a sparring platform. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they really are. They're acting like parents. But before we move off that scene, that's the important scene with that conversation at the dinner party with Miguel's family, is that Miguel, it just kind of reminds the audience that Miguel is still oblivious to them being involved, Carmen and Johnny, and that's why he starts talking about his date with Allie, and Johnny's like, dude, and like he doesn't have any motive why not to say it in front of his mom. He doesn't know anything's going on. But then he's like talking about, we punched up his Facebook pictures and everything, and because we thought she liked sushi and all that stuff, and he was like bragging about it. And then it cuts to them washing dishes, and he's sitting there trying to tell Carmen, look, it's not what you thought it was. I was actually I ran into her on my way to see you, and he's trying to like backpedal a little bit, which, I mean, thinking back to that episode, as much as we all love the Allie stuff, which we all do, I don't know. How do you feel from that episode, compared to all the progress and all the effort put into him getting with Carmen, that the stuff with Allie being there and that she was separated, right? If I remember, do you still in your brain think long term that there should be something with him and Allie, or do you think is good with Carmen? I don't know. And I think that's like the way that this is going to go, right? Like if Allie comes back, obviously Johnny has all these strong feelings for Allie, right? And has them for Carmen too. Yeah. But I don't really know. I think that, boy, that's hard. I don't know, because the whole him and Carmen and him kind of acting like Miguel's dad, that has so many implications too, between him and Robbie and him and Miguel. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting character choice. But that's the other part of it, is like with Carmen, it's like a new try at being a father, being a family, because how he left his wife, and we see her in this season. She comes back seems like she's cleaned up.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
need to go take care of Robbie, which is really important that she relies on him for that because it's karate related. But
Sure.
like with him and Miguel, we've established for the whole show that like he not only, it's not just, you know, subtext. He is very aggressively and on the nose trying to parent and be there for Miguel. And he said that to Miguel. He said that to Carmen. He said that to everybody. He's made it, especially when he was helping him recover from the back injury.
Right.
So being with Carmen is like his second attempt at that family unit that I think he feels he messed up. I don't think it's just Robbie that he feels that he failed. It's also his ex, who, you know, probably it wouldn't work out with them. You know, it's not like he wants a reconciliation, but there's more to it than just that with Carmen.
To go back to what you were saying though, there's obviously still a spark with Allie. It was his first love. That doesn't go away. And it never will, right? He's always going to have a soft spot for her. And who knows if she comes back. I mean, it seems as though it would be a very interesting and natural thing for her to come back and that somehow screw up things with Carmen. Because he is a screw up. You know, he screws everything up. He's trying so hard.
Yeah.
But in the end, everything gets messed up for Johnny. So that would be really interesting.
I'm gonna just real quick point out, I apologize for all there's not a lightning storm in my apartment. Like if anyone's having seizures from the flashing lights, sorry I didn't put a warning at the front. My son's here playing Halo, just off camera, and I have a big screen with very vibrant colors. So like it's just all over the place, and all my glossy pictures, you can see every shot of it. So apologize for the distraction, and hope no one's watching this while they're driving and goes into a seizure and crashes or something like that. Anyway, sorry. Let's talk about the training, because that was a fun part, a fun way to open this. It's just that because we left them at the end of the last episode where they finally came together at the Miyagi yard, and they established they were going to do this together. They start training, they say, I can't remember what the line is at the end of the last season, but it opens up right here. I think John Kreese making the phone call, we heard his side of it. It opens up right there on the other end of that phone call. And this time we have the continuing sentence after whatever they said at the end of the last season, where they said we're going to start training together, that we're going to work together with Miyagi-Do combined with Eagle Fang. And then you instantly, it's a little ridiculous that Johnny is like fighting positions, and then they go into their stance. The Eagles, or so many bird names, I keep getting them confused. The Eagles go into their stances, and then the Miyagi-Do start doing their kata meditation stuff, and then I can't remember his name, the fat kid that's not fat anymore kicks the other kid down. It's like, I'm sorry, dude. It's like, all right, first, I mean, they wouldn't be doing that like all that close anyway, even if you were doing the fighting position stuff. But I guess if everyone was in coordinated, what's the word? Whatever. If they were coordinated, no, that's not it. Anyway, if they were doing unified and doing it together as a group, whatever that word is, I can't
synchronized.
That's it. They then yeah, the kid probably wouldn't have kicked the other kid. But it was funny that you're instantly showing like, okay, we're bumping elbows already. And so then they decide to, then they start fighting or practicing sparring. And you have the two Cobra Kai kids. Miyagi or Daniel's just like, yeah, you're just flaring your arms at each other. And then it cuts to, and he says, yeah, a good offense. And he gets kicked. And then he's like, why do you have a rock in the middle of your dojo? He hits a rock. And then it cuts to the two Miyagi-Do students. And they're just like going in a circle. And Johnny's just drinking his water like, let's get on, come on, this is gonna take all day. It's like, no, this is a method, like you gotta wait till one of us is provoked. He throws the bottle at Dimitri. He's like, are you provoked yet?
Yeah.
Anyway, but you're seeing such a difference already, and it was hilarious and a fun way to start showing the contrast. And then it cuts to them washing the wax on, wax off on the cars. And then it pans over to Johnny's car. He's like, yeah, I cleaned it up real good. Ain't spare change is mine. And they're just like throwing out garbage. It's just hilarious. And then you have the conversations with Dimitri that come up, and then his getting abused outside. Miyagi's inside trying to do the meditation stuff. And it's hard. And his kids are laughing because they just hear everything Johnny's saying outside. And then it moves on to that discussion. Now, I feel like in the setup from the last season going into that training sequence and then that conversation they have, it didn't feel like a natural... I mean, it's funny. All that stuff is hilarious and well done. It's, again, reminding the audience, because not everyone is like Josh, who goes back and watches every season of Cobra Kai 2 or 3 times before they watch a new episode. I mean, most people watch the season and then next year they just move on to the next season. But they had to reintroduce the clashing principles that are taught in both dojos, and they demonstrated that very well, but almost too comedically. But it worked fine. But it just felt like Daniel and Johnny kind of bailed too quickly. Do you think so? Like,
yeah,
they're like, oh, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it was just they're both hotheads, right? And they both think they're the ones that know how to do it right and all that. I mean, like you said, the whole thing. Why is there a rock in the middle of your studio, like, or your dojo? You know, they really clash at the beginning. But the one thing that I think is like kind of annoying is that we know that like where they're going with it, right? You know what I mean? Like it just, but there are so many silly kind of twists and turns on the way. I guess they got to get 10 episodes out of it, right? But I mean, like we know from the very beginning, well, okay, so Cobra Kai is all offense, Miyagi-Do is all defense. So just learn them both and then use both. You know what I mean? But it just takes them so long to figure that out, right? You know, and they try to do things, but ultimately, you know, they try to do things to you know, like Daniel takes the Eagle Fangs for a little while, and Johnny takes the Miyagi-Dos. I mean, these are in later episodes, but.
Well, yeah, so later on, they come back the next day, and they're like, okay, obviously it's not working, so we're going to split up. And I thought, like, splitting up, the first thing they should have done is taken the other kids. That was what was weird to me, is like, he said, okay, the Eagles are going to go in the front, Miyagi-Do, we're going to stay, or we're going to go inside the dojo or whatever. But I was like, the first thing that you think they should have done is, like, flipped, taken the opposite kids so you can just kind of get familiar with them. Like, to me, that would have been the natural approach, you know? I think it was all yeah, you're right. You see where it's going because you know what they're doing. They're trying to just establish a little tension and complexity to mesh these two styles together that you've seen clash for 3 seasons now. And it works based on what happens in the next episode, which we'll go into right now. But like for them actually figuring out that you need both, and I complained about this in the overall discussion that we had of the whole season. Like by the time they get to like the 3rd point and the 4th point in the fight with Sam and Tori at the very end, like she's like, what do I do? It's like, hey, we figured this out like 7 episodes ago. It's not that complicated. You know, the audience knew right from that first episode where you're going with this because you really hit it in the head. It's like you got to use both. But like in the 2nd episode, they have a new idea that okay, this isn't working. So because they have the apology scene, right? And which as you love is the turn from the Rocky 3 reference, which was the first of many Rocky references in this season. And Miguel knocks on the door at Johnny's house when he and Sam can see it's not working out. And then he goes in and says, or he's telling Johnny, he's like, hey, you need to try and work it out. And he's like, it's not going to happen. We're just too different. And he says, well, what about Rocky 3? And then it has the sting from the right before is it Eye of the Tiger? I can't remember but it's before that montage, that note that always hits right before Rocky goes into his training. It was awesome. I was like, oh, that was cool. And then they play a little bit, and I don't think it was actual Bill Conti music, but it like really it was really like on the nose.
Right.
And then he says, well, what about it? And then he says, well, Rocky, the only way he could beat Clubber Lang is to have Rocky work together with Apollo, but Apollo had to make the first move.
Right.
And then he's like, well, what makes that was this, and that right before when I watched it the second time, as soon as he said, I'm like, that's interesting that Johnny's automatically Apollo, like because he's like the bad guy, right?
Right.
And it's like, and I was like, that's interesting. And then he even says, well, why do I have to be Apollo? And he's like, well, because striking first is more badass, and that's
right.
The concept. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. And I wonder if that was kind of annoyance to Johnny, because like, obviously Johnny, you think Johnny as an 80s kid was like, oh, because I know you love Apollo Creed. We've talked about this many times. I am not an Apollo Creed guy. But like Johnny, I don't know how Johnny feels about being compared to Apollo Creed as opposed to being Rocky, because Rocky's like the bad one, or the badass. He's the one that wins. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting line. Like, why do I have to be Apollo Creed? But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think there was anything more there than just like his like, I don't want to apologize? I thought there was.
No, I think it was just funny because it was more comedy. Like someone had to apologize. It was obviously going to be Daniel, and they just had some fun with it.
He sees the phone. Like Johnny's like, he's like trying to like he's asking a girl out. He's like rehearsing the lines before he dials. He's like, no, don't apologize. It shows weakness. And then there's a knock on his door, and it's Daniel. He's like, look, man, I just want to say I'm sorry. He's like, yeah, you should be sorry.
Yeah, right.
So funny. Anyway. So their next plan in the next episode, which I had to look it up, is learn stand. That's what it was. And then they decide they're gonna. Well, they kind of challenge each other that they're gonna teach each other their own styles, which is hilarious because Johnny or Miguel or Daniel. Daniel's pretty much in his living room because they're sharing beers, right? They're kind of bury the hatchet, and he's like, well, how about I teach you Miyagi-Do? And Johnny's like, well, that's fine, but I'm gonna teach you Eagle Fang. He's like, yeah, I'm excited to learn the three history that you started in the park.
Right.
And the name I'm pretty sure was inspired by this poster. So
yeah.
But like, it's funny because there actually is a lot of stuff that Miyagi or that Daniel learns from Johnny's style, and I liked how they did that. So they start the next episode with Johnny learning Miyagi-Do. Go ahead.
Well, another funny thing about that is like there's that one where Daniel comes up to him and goes, "As long as you're under my roof," and he goes, "What roof?" He's like, "What roof? We're outside." Like he just doesn't get it,
Yeah. So he starts doing the paint the fence, wax on, wax off stuff, and he's like really annoyed at the paint. That's right before he quits, but he's like going through all the steps. And what I noticed the second time, and you gotta say, as much as I how much I don't like Daniel anymore after
you hate him.
Season 1, episode 1. It was really beautiful. It's actually kind of emotional because they have the Karate Kid, Bill Conti's score, the training slow, beautiful music playing while Johnny is learning the techniques of Miyagi-Do, and Daniel's just there. He's talking. He's like, once there was a fisherman named whatever from Okinawa, whatever. He's like teaching him stuff, and I'm sure Johnny's just like, oh, shut up, let's just get to the point. But like for just a moment in that little montage, he shows him going through the training, and it's really kind of touching because you're seeing Johnny learn. If you think back to this kid from the first movie, you're seeing him learn what Daniel was all about, what he was learning from that other side, from the inside, and it's kind of beautiful. And what's interesting is that it's not until when he's on the water plank thing. He's doing the kata and everything, and suddenly he just throws a kick. I didn't notice this the first time. He throws a high kick. You're having a really hard time tonight.
I am. I'm struggling. I am struggling.
But he throws a high kick, and that's when he falls off the thing into the pond. And I was like, well, that's interesting because there was no kick in the kata, but when he tries to throw in an offensive move, that's when he loses balance. I was like, well, that's interesting. They don't make a point of it. There's no dialogue about it, but it's there. I was like,
yeah. That's though that is really interesting. So you're saying because he's throwing Cobra Kai strike first situations into it, he loses the balance and falls off the plank.
Yeah,
So
because and it's not that you can't throw a kick in there, but like that's the move that threw it all off balance and made him first take bath. Now, when he's in there, and I gotta say, one thing that bothers me, I hate this. I hate it in Star Wars too. In Star Wars, whenever you have any Jedi talking to, even Luke does it, I think, in the stupid sequel movies, but like whenever you have a Jedi teaching another Jedi and they're referencing a principle that was taught by Yoda, they quote Yoda in his messed up backwards language, do or do not, there is no try kind of stuff. Instead of like just saying exactly what the point is, they say it in their messed up, in his weird language, his speech pattern, right?
Right.
Daniel does the exact same thing with Miyagi, and it makes me crazy. He says, walk right side safe, walk left side safe, walk middle, squash like grape.
Right.
Like, why are you talking like that?
Right. You know English. You grew up with English. Yeah.
And then
now you're just mocking him.
Yeah, Johnny falls in, and then he gets up, and he's like, hey, and then he says something, and then he says, he teaches you the 300 year or 3,000 whatever he says 300-year-old ancient techniques, and then you can't even help it with his English. He's like, dude, don't go there. And I was like, no, he's right. Why are you? It is a mockery. It's like, just, you can tell someone you're safe if you go on one path, you're safe if you walk down the middle, you're gonna get hurt. Like, you can say that without saying right side safe, left side, and it was bugging me, and I was so glad Johnny called him out on it. I was like going crazy, but I hate that. I hate when they do that.
So speaking about language or lines that come out of the original movies, there were a couple other ones that were there too. Like, for example, when Dimitri and Hawk are talking about Moon and her breaking up with her girlfriend, and he's like, oh, how long's that been over? He's like, weeks. And he goes, weeks, how many, 1 week, 5 weeks, how many weeks, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what Daniel said to Allie, right? And then in episode 2, I believe it is, when Kenny first starts getting picked on by the kids, by the LaRusso kid and his friends, they actually say, I think he's going to cry. And they say it in the exact same way that Bobby and Dutch said it at the tournament when they were picking on Daniel. So, it's interesting. We talked to Bo, about these things, and he said that there were people on set whose specific job was to have all the movies on an iPad so they could go and reference certain things and say them exactly the same way. And it seems like those were a couple of times where they did that. And
pull up shots the same, because the shot where Kenny tries to climb up over the fence. I was like, as I was watching, I was like, oh, what? Because we didn't know anything about Kenny at that point. We didn't know where we were going with this new character. But we're like, who is going to jump out and beat up these kids like Miyagi? And I was like, and you know how much I didn't like that in the first season. I did not like how that was done, the beach scene when Daniel jumped in and saved Robbie from the bullies. But like when they started that scene, he's being chased and he charges up the fence, and then they end up going through the fence and he hides in the dumpster. I was like, thank goodness they didn't have like Robbie or someone jump in and fight him off, because I would have been really annoyed because it was so dumb. But the shot, him climbing the fence, that shot was done exactly the way it was originally. Couple of the callbacks real quick. The park where they bullied the kid. Did you catch what that was called?
The park where they bullied the kid?
Where they told him to show up in the cosplay was Balboa Park.
Oh yeah, there were a couple of little references like that. Like there was a reference where they said something like, so at the end of Rocky V, when he hits George Washington Duke, he says, sue me for what, right?
Touch me, I'll sue. Touch me.
Yeah. And he says, sue me for what? And then Johnny says the same thing, right?
Daniel's watching his mouth. He's like, dude, we're going to get sued here.
Yeah, he's like, sue me for what? Yeah.
For what?
Yeah, exactly. And
the password on the new security system at the LaRusso's house is Outlander.
Right.
What is Outlander? I was like, that sounds like a movie or a ship or something.
It is.
It's a movie?
It's a movie. Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of 80s movies I missed. Okay, go ahead and talk while I look up Outlander.
Well, I was just going to say on that there were lots of little Rocky references here and there. Sue Me for What was one. You know, they use the training montage for music. For Johnny's training when he's getting ready for the fight with Daniel. So, you know, yeah, Rocky's music was all over this.
It was. Was it the actual music though? It was super close. I really couldn't tell.
I'm not sure.
Couldn't tell.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, the other things, so we could just talk about really quickly. Then the training. They finished the training. Johnny we know what happens when Johnny's learning Miyagi-Do, and I think he really is getting some appreciation for it. I think he was really enjoying it until the painting. He's like, yeah, screw this, we're done. And he's like, this is just a waste of time. And he starts throwing in his handyman. He's like, well, if you just did this and buy an airbrush or whatever. He's like, and he's like, but he lost the point. Because then he shows up in the next episode, and Johnny's out there sanding down the.
Yeah, that was so funny.
And Daniel comes out and he's like got his little hand sanders. He's like, he's all excited. He's like, dude, you just threw off like an entire week of training from me. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was gonna be a whole week of sanding that stupid thing. Anyway, so here's what happens: is Johnny teaches Daniel the Cobra or the Eagle Fang stuff. Now, what I like about that, other than the clashing personalities, is by the time at the end of the sequence, when Daniel climbs the chain, he gets up to the top and he cheers. He's like, yeah, like he's really proud of himself for doing it. And hilarious line is when he's doing the punches or the push-ups on his knuckles. He's like, manliness next to godliness. So he's like shoveling out the coals, and then Daniel's like, you know, you're supposed to shovel the coals into the thing. He's like, shut up. He's like, don't question me. And then he has him walk on him later. It was really cool. It was really fun, and all that cool industrial kind of music, that good vibe. Right. It was a very Rocky IV Russia music versus super well done, and they both appreciated it. And then the end of it, he takes him to the hockey game, which we could talk about that, where he sticks him on the hockey players, right next to the penalty box, because he's got that all planned, and he like provokes, and then he gets the guy in timeout. Which was weird. I don't know why the guy turned and blamed him for it, because it's like if the ref took the audience or the spectator's word for it or whatever. It was like whatever. But then he's egging him on, and then he goes out and into the fight. He says, yeah, this guy says he can kick all your guys, or he can kick your butt any day. Then he goes out, they fight, or they have the confrontation in the hallway. Johnny provokes again, cuts to the hockey players, and then they start going off on LaRusso, Otto, and his wife and everything. And then Daniel finally, he strikes first. Did you notice that? It's hilarious how they do it, but he strikes first. He's through the first punch. They get into the thing. He kicks all their butts. He turns around, and Johnny came back with a pretzel or a hot dog or something like that. He's like, "What happened to you?" He's like, "No, be there." And like, oh, it was so clever, because both of them in that one scene was really well done. Both of them applied some principle that they learned from the other person. Daniel threw the first punch, and Johnny avoided the whole fight, partly to be hilarious because it was funny, but he was like, yeah, he picked up on that. That was really great. What about Tori and whatever LaRusso's wife's name? I can't remember. I never remember.
Amanda LaRusso.
Yeah, what do you think about all that stuff? So there's the confrontation in the grocery store where John approaches her, and he kind of tells her about the story, and then there's the scene where Tori, where Amanda confronts her at her job at the restaurant,
right, and accidentally gets her fired. Yeah. So yeah, I think that Amanda was in the wrong for doing that. I mean, really? For getting her fired, sure. I think that.
Well, she didn't do anything to get her fired. Tori yelled at her, but she got pissed and yelled at her boss and snapped at a customer.
But you can't go walking into someone's place of business and talking to them while they're on the clock. I mean, you want to wait for her to get off the work. Well, no, I mean, I'm just saying, like, you wait till she gets off the clock and talk to her then. Time is money here. Come on.
Or approach him in a grocery store.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and that was dumb because John sneaks up on her. Amanda's just shopping, and she turns around and she's like, aren't you in violation of the, what's it called, the restraining order or whatever?
Yeah, and they're like, that's on you, actually.
Actually, you're the one in violation. I'm like, dude, you just approached her. She's shopping. You came in there. She's like, that would not hold up, but whatever. That wasn't the point. I don't know. So you didn't like that she showed up there at her.
No,
work.
I think there was a better place and time, but I understand why they did it.
I liked it. I think it was because you had to build that tension. If she gets her fired, that just fuels Tori, because she even says, Tori comes up to her and then later on in that episode, and she says, "Thanks for lighting the match underneath me. I really needed that." Like really getting threatening. And when she shows up at the work, because now there's the counter move, right? Mm-hmm. Counter strike, you could say, from Cobra Kai. She shows up at LaRusso's job, throws down the bag of groceries, and then she makes her threat. She says, "I'm the one that buys food for and takes care of my family," and that because she's almost insulted by it. Right. And she says, what is the line? Or she says, "Thanks for lighting the match under me because I really needed that," and then LaRusso or Amanda says, "Oh, what have I done? Like, what did I do? What did I start?" Because now she becomes a little more. She's well intended.
Right.
I think these things early on set up the interactions they have later on. Because
the interesting thing is that all of this stuff was done with the best of intentions. You know, all of it, and it just created a big mess in the valley. So, yeah.
Which I think is a big deal why they didn't. If they had gone public and reported to the police the fight in the LaRusso's house, I think that would have just completely escalated. The fight in the school is one thing, but if they had the breaking and entering and the thing, like there would have been the cops couldn't they couldn't just wave it away under a rug that time, sweep it away. I don't know. I thought it was all done really well. The only other thing to talk about is the hesitancy with Terry Silver. We'll just finish with that. There was several scenes, the whole little sushi party with Kreese showing up. He meets Cheyenne or Carmen or Cheyenne. Cheyenne's her name, I think.
Right.
He's like, "Didn't know you're married." She's like, "Oh no, we're just enjoying the journey together for now," or whatever the hippie line was.
Right.
And then he's back there with all these tools.
Yeah.
The expression on Terry's face the whole time, he's just like, he's waiting for John to do something to embarrass him. He's like on guard that he's gonna like snap and do something or say something, make a scene. Mm-hmm. Or two, he's on guard because he doesn't want John to influence him like he used to. He's like, I don't want him to trigger and get a response out of me. He's trying so hard to stay distant and to play it cool. Which was really well. He's just watching him the whole time. He's just looking at him carefully, and then John's just playing the scene. He's just enjoying his friends, and like, the one guy makes a line about, "Oh, I didn't know you had a karate phase." And he's like, "Karate's not a phase; it's a part." And he turns to Terry. He's like, "Oh, you may leave it for a while, but it always comes back for you," or something like that.
Right, and that's just that. That just goes to show the manipulation that John Kreese has, particularly over Terry. Terry says after they get out of the cage, "I've got you for your whole life," and he's going to use that. So, yes.
And it's a completely different technique than he used on Johnny.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like when he came back and manipulated Johnny, he knew what complete different. It was all about the bullying stuff. It was all about, I took you in. You owe this to me, because he's really good at playing cards with those favors, right?
Sure.
But like it wasn't about, karate's who you are. It wasn't like that. It was all about like you need help taking the, are you what's best for these kids kind of stuff. Are you really preparing them? And he starts showing them getting into fights in this season 2, right? When they're having issues, and he's like, "See, you need my help to do what's best for these kids." And then they start having their clashing over who's in charge of the dojo. Perfectly done. That angle isn't what's going to work on Terry Silver. It's the Vietnam stuff, but it's mostly that we started Cobra Kai for a reason, to handle when we came, and he does the Rambo, the First Blood movie scene at the end of the movie, where he talks about when they got back from the war and all the protesting and everything. He's like, we did this because we need people to be strong again.
Well, and that's interesting because that's also the same reason that Johnny brought Cobra Kai back, right? That's what's so interesting about that. So So Johnny says that the reason he did it was because he saw that this generation needed something like that. And clearly John Kreese and Terry Silver thought the same thing.
Yeah.
And you also hear here, this isn't in this episode, but in another episode, you hear how it is and why Terry Silver really isn't around much for Cobra Kai. He's there to help him financially, but he's not there to.
Really you mean earlier on?
Right. So
yeah. So other than the delay showing him, I thought the Terry Silver stuff was really. I thought it was a really good transition into him taking the bait, because he really did at the end of the episode. It's not to the pulse hair back that we talked about, which I think is episode 3.
Yeah.
But I like that. And he was talking about the hippie protesters after the war, and then he's in the backyard with all these modern day, hipster, or not hipster, but hippie. I don't know what the new age people, his new age friends, and his Carmen on this journey together, eating tofu and stuff. Because they even makes that line. He's like, "Yeah, tell Cheyenne thanks for the tofu," and that he didn't even eat, by the way. But he's just throwing it right back at his face. He's like, "Dude, you're not a man anymore. Like He knows how to work people. He knows what cards.
He's a master manipulator. Yeah.
Really good setup. I think you have the Tori stuff being set up with Amanda. Mm-hmm. You have the John Kreese stuff set up with Terry, and you can see that rivalry. Knowing what happens later on in the season, on my second watch through, Terry being on guard, it's like he does go for the bait, but not exactly, because he knows Kreese, and there's that line, because he even says it here, which is interesting when he brings up later on. He says, my biggest weakness is you. But he says that here. He said, as soon as you disappearing was the best thing that happened to me. I went into therapy, and I got my life straightened
sobriety,
and then I came back, and it changed my life. And he was so proud of that. And and knowing what happens the rest of the season, I'm like listening to him this time, and I'm like, he knows exactly he knows where his lines are. I may go back and help, but I'm not gonna fall for John Kreese's stuff anymore. And I am not going to let him take control. I'm not going to fall into the pitfall of his crazy, because he still sees Johnny in this petty high school rivalry nonsense. And you don't really see that with Terry. Terry, the rest of the season, he's not into all this teenager drama. He's really not. He wants the business, but he wants the Cobra Kai back. He wants the philosophy. But also part of it, I think, is vendetta with John. I think part of the reason he comes back is because he does ultimately want to screw over John Kreese to get him back. Yeah.
Oh, you think he has that idea at the beginning?
Possibly. I don't think he wants to, but I think he's like, dude, you're not my friend. I'm not gonna pretend you're my friend because you're not good for me. Because I think he
ultimately realizes that he's never gonna change and that he's always gonna be somebody
and he's
who manipulates.
Yeah. He knows he's his weakness. He's not gonna go back and pick up the snake and carry it just to be bitten. He knows exactly who John Kreese is. He knows John Kreese after all these years. He's never changed. He's not going to change. And the first time John pulls out the "you owe me your life from the war" card later in the season, he's like, how many times you can bring that up?
Right.
If you look at Karate Kid 3, he fell for that instantly every time.
Well, the other thing is though, he did say that he's got him for the rest of his life. So John Kreese is kind of like, you don't even have a life without me. All these riches you have, it's not.
Yeah. So the only other thing to mention is Kenny.
And so Kenny. So the thing about Kenny, I actually really like Kenny's character because he's a sweet kid. It's another example of a sweet kid, because I think Johnny and Daniel are both hotheads, right? They're coming from backgrounds where they already have one of my favorite lines of the whole season is when Terry Silver is standing in the gas station or the convenience store market with Daniel, and he says, when he talks to him about you turned me into this monster or whatever, and he goes, I didn't really have to do much. I just had to wind you up and let you go. And he basically says to him, he goes, you were already a hothead. And he goes, maybe you don't, he's like, you kind of liked it. Maybe you won't accept that you've always had a little Cobra Kai in you, right?
Yeah.
The thing about Kenny is he does not have any Cobra Kai in him.
And it seems like he should. his dad's away, his mom's working constantly, never home, and his brother is in jail.
Well, his dad's away. His dad is
Military.
away. He's a military, so it's not like his dad's taken off, right?
Right.
But then, yeah, his brother's in jail, and we learn the reason he was in jail is because he's protecting Kenny, right? He was protecting Kenny from one of his friends. That's why he's in jail. You learn that in another episode. They ask, he says that he tells them that. But yeah, this is the beginnings of Kenny starting to get picked on, interestingly, by the LaRusso kid. So there's that. But yeah, so Kenny getting picked on by the LaRusso kid over a girl, it's really interesting how now in that series, the LaRusso is the Cobra Kai, the Cobra Kai, the Johnny Lawrence in that one. And
he's supposed to be influenced by that little blonde kid that looks like Charlie from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That kid's so annoying, and he's like a smaller kid. He's like, "Come on, Lapusso," and it's like, dude.
I know. So you can come up with something better than that. Yeah.
Kenny's great, solid start, and I because you don't even know who the kid is when it shows in his opening scene. He's getting ready for school, and he's playing his little game. Gets on the bus, he's dancing. They start laughing at him. And then all the stuff in gym happens, and it's just like, man, he was a good kid. He was already instantly likable, very charismatic.
Yeah, he is, and that's the thing, right? Is that you see his progression towards the end, and it really helps Robbie because Robbie's like, "What have I done?" Right? Because he knows it too. He knows he's a sweet kid, and he turned him into this monster. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good start for him too. I really enjoyed his character in this whole season.
Good episodes, set things up. Not very much. Like the last season, it was 2 episodes, dedicated just to let's explain what happened after the fight. Mm-hmm. This one, it's like, forget it. We just got to get to the point. Whatever. It wasn't as big of a colossal thing as like there was a lot more to talk about after the fight. So many people involved in lawsuits and the back injury and the Stingray being a security guard applicant, all that. So much going on, but this one is kind of move right into it, and they spend 2 episodes mostly on the Miyagi clashing with Eagle Fang. So, but good setup. We're gonna come back and talk about episodes 3 and 4, and then we'll do 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8, and then 9 and 10, and we'll see when we can get those out, because scheduling for us has become very complicated in our personal lives, and so thanks for hanging in there, Josh. I know you're exhausted. This is like right at the beginning hours of my shift, so I'm like this is like my normal wake time. I slept through my afternoon. Sorry for anyone that had any epileptic seizures from watching my channel, or not my channel, I mean my side of my frame. But anyway, any final words, Josh?
No, I think, like you said, this is a great setup to the whole season. I think it was the hang on from the season 3 was short and sweet to get past, and they moved right into. And I think that's also helpful in that, like you said, I think the thing that was helpful here is they literally start right where they left off, right? Like when from season 2 to 3, there's just transition where there's like some time has passed. People have ended up in jail. Everybody's going, and you have to figure out where everybody's been at.
Yeah,
the exact same spot. Point. Yeah,
you have to establish where everyone is. It takes time to do that.
Right here, they didn't have to do that because they started right over there, which is really interesting because Miguel is noticeably bigger. So,
yes, and that's the thing is like they kind of need to wrap it up because these kids are going to get so much older. So look at what's his name, because there's a line later about the Russo kid, whatever his name is, the son. He's like, well, I hit a growth spurt.
That's like we're gonna start getting like Saved by the Bell college years.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, if we move out of high school and we're still doing the show, I'm uninterested. And now because like we said before, now we're dragging the middle school kids into it. I'm like, okay, come on, let's tighten this up. Anyway, excellent start, and we will come back and talk about the continuation. This was first learn stand, next comes then learn fly, which is, because that's the Karate Kid. We could have done those 3 episodes together, but there's no way we would have stayed awake for it. So, again, thanks, Josh, for hanging in there, and thanks for everyone for watching. I know, not that we're like the most awesome people in the world, but it doesn't feel like most people dive. most people don't dive into as much as we have in previous seasons. We'll try and stay up to that and talk about as much as we can about these, because we notice everything, even if I don't know what Eagle
Fang.
Oh, sorry, Outlander. Even if I don't know what Outlander was, Josh does.
Exactly.
He's our 80s expert. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time talking about episodes 3 and 4 on Saints on Cinema. Late.
See ya.